We are happy to have with us today CLINT McDonald. He is the executive director of the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition. His history in law enforcement goes back for 32 years, and he was a sheriff before he became the executive director of the Texas Border Sheriff's Coalition. And in fact, he was one of the sheriffs that was a founding member of this organization. So, Clint, if you would please tell us the history of the organization and about your involvement in your post-retirement life now as the executive director.
Yes. Back in 2005, a group of sheriffs got together in Laredo, Texas. And these 16 sheriffs from the border region of Texas got together because we were seeing very similar problems along the border from El Paso to Brownsville. And we knew as each county as an individual, we were seeing a lot of the same problems in each county. So we got together and decided in May of 2005 that we would form a coalition and try to bring the attention of our border situation to the public and to our government. Not long after we founded, then Governor Rick Perry of Texas came to us and decided that he would grant us $3 million to get started because he was seeing the same issues of it, border issues that we were having that were affecting the rest of the state.
Mm-hmm.
So Governor Perry gave us some money, met with us back in Laredo at the press conference when the media asked him what we were going to do with the money. He said, these sheriffs know best what to do with that money. And that money was funded to the coalition. And then the coalition then in turn subgranted it out to each of the counties. With that being done, we had counties that could not spend the money that was allocated to them because in the beginning we just divided it up equally among the counties. And there were counties that could not spend the money. So we were able to put that money back on the table and give it to counties that could spend it, needed to spend it. Therefore, we were spending 97 to 99% of the grant funded. And over the years from 2005 to 2017, there was never a finding in an audit. We were never written up for anything, external or internal audits. We passed every one of them. And so we were a good steward of the taxpayers' money. And unfortunately, in 2017, we were defunded by the state of Texas.
Great.
And the coalition soon become inadequate to be able to support itself. And the director at that time resigned, and I had retired in 2016. So I was asked to come on and take over the coalition. And basically, they needed someone to pay the bills, and I was retired, so they felt I was the person for the job. But being a founding member of the coalition and a two-time president of the coalition, I was happy because I believe in the mission of the coalition. And so myself and our executive assistant, Amanda Wilkins, are the longest tenured people with the coalition. We still have 4 of our sheriffs from the original bunch as well. So we keep it going. And in 2007, when Arizona, New Mexico, and California started looking at what we were doing, they came together with us in South Padre Island in 2007 and created the Southwestern Border Sheriff's Coalition. And that makes up all the counties within 25 miles of the international border from San Diego, California to Brownsville, Texas. And I serve as the executive director of that coalition as well.
Oh, wow. That is great. So you're probably going to get to this, but my curiosity is getting the better of me. If the government took away your funding, how are you funded now?
Well, with contacts and a lot of people that I know, I came in 2018 and was able to get funded through the state of Texas.
Okay.
And we were only funded for 1 year. And then they dropped us. And then I was able to get funding through the federal government. And then we come up with the change of the administration. And even though I had federal funding, the new administration cut all ties to us. And once I had communications within the White House for the past three administrations, but when the new administration came in 2020, all of our ties were cut off. And I was asked to meet with former President Trump and Governor Abbott in Weslaco, Texas. And this grant pays for my travel. And when I submitted the reimbursement for that travel, this was in July, and I received a letter from the federal government saying that all travel had been banned in February. So they would not reimburse me for that travel. And so I had been to the Western State Sheriff's Conference. I had been to our conference, and travel was okay. But going to Weslaco, Texas, to meet with former President Trump, and then Governor Abbott, that was not acceptable. And the federal government canceled all my travel for the remaining of that year. At that time, Governor Abbott picked the coalition back up, and I took 6 Democrat sheriffs to Austin to testify on behalf of Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star. And with that, there are a lot of questions that were answered by both sides of the aisle. And those Democrat sheriffs stood up for Texas, and they stood with the governor as to what had to be done on the border.
That's good. That is true bipartisan work right there.
Well, the coalition wants to be bipartisan. Unfortunately, there are some politics that creep in every now and then, but I say I work for both Democrats and Republicans, and so I have to be non-denominational to speak.
Right.
And I don't. I have a lot of good friends on both sides of the aisle. So, and I still have a lot of good friends in D.C. on both sides of the aisle. So we just keep moving forward and pray everything turns out right.
Yeah. Those are great relationships, and it's wonderful that you've maintained those. So one of the things that I had wanted to also focus on today is getting your input on the recent border events at El Paso. What do you know about that from a sheriff's perspective?
Well, that is very interesting. When that story broke, a lot of us saw it, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of local media did not pick it up.
Right.
The the media that did report on it did not know a whole lot about it. And talking to folks in El Paso, the federal government is not talking about it. So
I'm just going to say I am not at all surprised by that.
no, when you have something that goes on to that magnitude, and they do not talk about it, then you start wanting questions answered. And right now, we're just not getting those questions answered.
Okay. Well, have you had direct communication with the sheriffs who are right there in the El Paso area?
Our administrative assistant lives in El Paso, and she was born and raised in El Paso, and right now is the first time in her lifetime that they've started locking their doors because it has just gotten that bad.
Wow. That's surprising that it's this far into, well, we're in 2024. I'm just going to say I'm surprised by that, but that's good to know. When you don't get that information, you don't know it.
Yes, here a few months ago, we had 26 sheriffs from the state of Indiana came down to Eagle Pass, Texas, and looked at what was going on the border because they do not get this information in Indiana. They
That's not
have
surprising.
no idea what was going on the border. So 26 of their sheriffs and 2 of their legislators came down to visit Eagle Pass, and we spent 2 days. And we went to a soft-sided shelter in Eagle Pass that is just a holding shelter for people to be processed and on into the United States. And they were told that that processing center in Eagle Pass, Texas, is costing the government outside of payroll $32 million a month.
Whoa, that's a lot of money.
Yes, and there are multiple soft-sided shelters along the border.
So I know that they had a National Sheriff's Association meeting in DC back in February. Did you or any of your members get the opportunity to attend that?
I attended by phone on the Sheriff's Alliance meeting at that conference. I did not make the trip.
Okay. The reason I asked is that there was a gentleman, a sheriff out of Ohio, that delivered just a compelling message that I had the opportunity to catch on one of the social media channels. His name is Rick Jones. He's out of Ohio. And he said, today, every state is a border state because of how the people spread throughout the country after they come through the border. I thought that was pretty insightful and profound. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, he's absolutely correct. And right now, trying to alleviate the massive flow at the border and saying that everything is better and they're gaining control, they are now flying people in. You get in Guatemala and in Mexico, Honduras, and all these places, they have set up shops and they've set up their mobile app where they're giving away cell phones and letting people apply for asylum by their app. And when they get approved, they are picking these people up in major cities in those countries and flying them into the United States by the hundreds. And we're up to, the last count I had was over 250,000 that they have flown into this country.
The organizations that are facilitating that, are these now non-governmental organizations, NGOs?
Yes, these are, yes, NCOs, and we have seen they have taken over just entire hotels, and the federal government is paying these NCOs to operate these things and take care of these people. So it's a massive, massive funding opportunity for these organizations to have these federal contracts and get this money. So we have no idea or no way to know how much of this money is actually being spent on what the government wants it spent on. And we see it day in and day out in the cities along the border that it's just unreal the amount of people flowing across the border, and as the situation happened in El Paso, when you have a group come through the razor wire and just bulldoze over your National Guard troops, and you have law enforcement using less than lethal action against them with bean bags, then we're the joke of the world. and the
Yeah.
world is seeing this.
Yes, they are. They are. That paints a pretty dismal picture of what's going on at the border. I'm just going to say it.
We see it every day, and it's crazy. We spent last year. We took a poll of our sheriffs, and last year we had recovered over 1,000 bodies since this administration took over. I know the county that I retired in, we would have 1 to 2 to 3 a year, and now they're getting 30 plus a year. And the humanitarian excuse that the federal government's using is not working, because more and more people are dying. And when you have the cartels in control of this border and human life means nothing to them, and you have women bringing their infant children across the river and drowning, you know that we need to do something, and nothing's being done. And then when you have Governor Abbott trying to do something, and you have your federal government fighting to stop him from protecting the citizens of this country, that is where we have become a third world country.
I couldn't agree with you more. So one of the questions I wanted to cover today is, we know that the special sessions of the legislature here in Texas last year, they created a pretty significant amount of funding to go toward additional personnel and vehicles for the counties on the border. So have you seen that money? Is it making a difference for your members?
Yes, we have seen a lot of that money, and it actually it went to your county on the border if your county judge and commissioner's court signed the emergency declaration. Those counties that did not sign the emergency declaration did not receive that money.
Do you know how many counties there were that did not sign on for that?
I don't know exactly the number. I believe it's probably 6 of our border counties that did not.
Okay.
And that wasn't left up to the sheriff. That was left up to their county judge and commissioner's court.
I can't understand why anyone would turn down money to help defend their county. That makes no sense to me.
Well, unfortunately, it's politics.
Yeah, unfortunately, those politics get in the way of a lot of things. And unfortunately, it seems to, I'm just going to say it, it seems that politics get in the way of common sense more than anything.
Absolutely. For years, and the first time I testified in Washington, D.C. was in 2006. And then President Bush, we went there to ask him to stop using catch and release. So, and I told him then, the biggest problem we have with our state and federal government is they cannot tell the difference between immigration and border security. They are two totally opposite things. They want to lump them all together and make it sound pretty, but it's not. You don't have border security when you just open up your border. And immigration is the only thing that the federal government has control of. They do not, by our Constitution, have control of the border. They have control of immigration, but not our borders. Each state is allowed to defend its own borders. So the problem is we're having is, as I say, they don't know the difference between border security and immigration. And it's not a red issue and it's not a blue issue. It's a red, white, and blue issue.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, that red and blue get in the way of the red, white, and blue.
I could not agree with you more. That is so frustrating to me, but you're 100% correct on that. So, we've heard some reports back and forth on the current status of our immigration laws and us being able to enforce them. What is the current situation of that?
Well, we have the laws on the books to control the border.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, each administration has their own policies on how to enforce laws. And therefore, that's the problem we're having is this administration has decided not to enforce laws. Therefore, they ran on having an open border,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have an open border, and every citizen's paying for that open border.
They are. I also just wanted to comment on this. Those cities that said we want to be a sanctuary city, I think that they are having some pretty serious regrets at this point. And yet they are wanting us as the taxpayers to bail them out for bad decisions that they made when all of this first broke out.
Well, of course, and it took Texas governor to show them what it really means to be a sanctuary city.
Yes, he
And
did.
the problem is they are getting federal funds to help them with that because this administration is a sanctuary administration. So they're getting help, but the citizens and cities along the border are not getting the help.
Yep, that's true. So you mentioned earlier about how your organization had received funding from the state from the last legislation that passed in special session last year. So if they end up, I know there's this one law that's pending, whether it ends up and how it ends up, we don't know. But the law that says that sheriffs, the counties can arrest and detain people that are illegal immigrants. Is it possible that if that were to be pushed through, that you all could request additional funding from the state because of the burden it would place on your budgets?
Well, we would hope so.
Yep.
Unfortunately, we've seen over the years in the office of sheriff many unfunded mandates, and
Mm-hmm.
with the law that allows Texas peace officers. So along the border, you can have police departments, you can have state officers, you can have whatever you have, constables, police departments, sheriffs, and then your state peace officers can fill up a county jail real fast.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that burden is put back on the county to fund. And you get to the point where are you going to have space to house your local criminals if you need to put locals in jail,
Right.
other than just having them full of migrants and illegals that you're having to wait till they process. So it's going to be a learning curve for everyone.
Right. Well, it's a tough situation, and there's no easy one size fits all answer. I wish there were, but unfortunately, that's not how this works.
No, we knew coming in that there was not a cookie cutter approach to it. We have to use every tool in the toolbox to do the job today. When we first started the coalition, the idea of border security was new to the extent that before it got this bad, your people coming across the border were migrant workers, and they would come in, and if they did break into a hunting cabin or ranch house or a farmhouse, they would clean up after themselves, and they would leave notes thanking for their hospitality, and they did minimal damage. And a lot of ranchers would leave water and food for them.
Mm-hmm.
But this new breed of criminal that's coming across, because now they can just go to a port of entry and give themselves up, and they've got it made. But the ones still coming in between the ports of entry, the ones that the cartels are having transport their drugs, and heaven forbid what they bring in with them. When you have over 2 million gotaways right now, then you have no idea what they're bringing into this country
No.
because no one knows. They know that they came through, but they never had contact with them. So you have no idea what you have in this country today. And these people are criminals, and they're forced, or they just volunteer into that life by the cartels. And so right now our international border is controlled by the cartels of Mexico.
That information, unfortunately, is not going to be shocking to anyone. I think we all know that. You simply said it out loud, and not everyone is willing to do that. So I thank you for your courage, because that's a big statement, but it's true.
Well, I have a lot of good friends in the United States Border Patrol. And as I said last month in Reno, Nevada, with the deputy chief border patrol there and several of the sector chiefs from the southern border and the northern border, our deputies are going to stand side by side with those border patrol agents on this border. And when the fighting starts, we're going to have as many bruises on us as they have, or we're not going to have a job tomorrow, because our citizens of the United States mean more to us than that. And we know that those men and women of the Border Patrol are the heroes out there working hard, and they have no support from Washington, D.C. And you have the media saying that Border Patrol are cutting razor wire and they're fighting with Governor Abbott. That is not true. That is media hype to fill a
Wow.
24-hour news cycle.
Well, I really thank you for pointing that out. It's things like that that it's why we do what we do. We want to share the truth of what's really going on. And it's people like you sharing stories like that that make it possible for us to get that word out. Otherwise, we wouldn't know the difference either, because we're not there like you are.
Yes, it is frustrating anytime that I'm traveling around the country and look at a local newscast for what they think is actually going on the border. And that's why we've reached out to our National Sheriff's Association, which is over 3,800 sheriffs strong, that any of those sheriffs can come down and tour the border anytime, and they're welcome, and we want to make sure that they're able to take that back to their fellow officers, their legislation, and let them know what's truly going on the border, because you don't know unless you come see it. And
No.
when you have politicians that tell you they've been to the border and they do like this administration has done, they fly into McAllen or El Paso or San Diego or Yuma, Arizona, and they give a press conference on the tarmac and get back in the jet and fly off.
Yep.
They have not been to the border.
No, they haven't. And if they had, I'm pretty sure that, let's just say the administration would make certain that it was a clean and scrubbed environment before they had any cameras rolling. Is that fair?
Well, that's exactly what happened in El Paso when Biden came to El Paso.
Of
They
course it was.
they went in and cleaned up the entire city, and took everything and made it all real pretty and shiny. And I thought it was poetic justice that he let them film him walking down next to the border wall.
I'm not even going to touch that. I'm just not. That's just rich. Okay. Can we just say it for what it is?
Well, it's a hypocrisy at its finest when they put a wall or fence around the Capitol, but they won't put a fence along our border. That's hypocrisy in its finest.
Well, not only the White House, but so many of these politicians that live behind gated communities, it's the same concept. It's like, you know, it's good for us too. So what's the deal with us not getting our border wall?
Well, unfortunately, like I say, the problem we have in D.C. is problems on both sides of the aisle. When they get there, they seem to not realize that we, the people, are the ones they work for, and we become a servant to them once they get there, and that's just a lot of things need to be changed in this country, and that's one of them.
You and I are 100% on the same page with that because I am so frustrated by that. It's like we, the taxpayers, sign the paychecks of all of those people. And how dare them be so pompous to think that they are going to tell us what to do? We sign their paychecks.
Well, in any democratic society, and we've seen it in history, the fall and rise of a democratic society, that once they know that they can provide themselves gifts from a treasury, we've lost them.
Yep. Well, I think it's time that we, the people, tell them that that doesn't work for us anymore and we want to see some changes. What do you think?
Well, that's what we need to happen, but I don't see it happening.
Well, there's a lot of roadblocks to it. I will give you that. So, you have been a wealth of information today. What we want to do is to share your stories and the stories of all of your members throughout all of our social media platforms because it's people like you. And I'm going to also say thank you to Sheriff Salinas as well, because he was so gracious to come on with us and tell us what's really going on in his county. And we look forward to hearing from some more of your members so we can do those same kinds of stories with them. So is there anything else that you'd like to add as we close out today?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. We, our sheriffs never wanted to be immigration officers, but right now our sheriffs are enforcing the crime that is committed and not the immigration status. And unfortunately, that's come very polluted in what's going on these days. So our sheriffs will continue to work 24/7 for the rights and the protection of life and property on the international border and for the rest of our country.
Well, and we thank you for your service to our country. Without you, we wouldn't be here.